If you are an executive looking at agentic AI, there is one mistake you cannot afford to make. Do not treat token costs as simple model pricing issue, because in many deployments, the model is not the main problem. The architecture is. And if your team gets that wrong, your AI product can look impressive in demos and still become economically weak in production. That is the risk. A lot of leaders see rising AI bills and assume that the fix is to switch to a cheaper model. That can help at the margin, but it often misses the real source of cost. In agent systems, you are not paying only for answers. You are paying for the operating pattern around those answers. You are paying for the instruction set to the model. You are paying for the tool definition attached to every call. You are paying for the conversation history that gets replayed again and again. You are paying for background activity the user never sees. You are paying for subagents that restart context from scratch. And you are paying for oversized tool outputs that stay in the memory and keep inflating future calls. So the right question is not just what models we are using. The real question is what kind of cost structure did we build around it? That is where many companies get exposed. Let me break it down in plain business terms. The first problem is the system prompt tax. Most agent systems do not start with a blank slate. They start with a large block of instructions. Those instructions define behavior, guardrails, tool use, memory handling, brand voice, escalation rules, and task logic. That can become a massive fixed call on every single call. So before the model has done anything useful, the system may already have spent a large chunk of tokens just explaining itself to the model. For a chief executive officer or chief financial officer, that should sound familiar. It is overhead, and overhead repeated on every transaction becomes a margin problem. The second issue is tool schema overhead. Executives hear that tools make agents more capable. That is true. But every tool also comes with structured definitions that have to be passed to the model. If your system attaches a large package of tools to every request, even when most of them are not needed, then you are paying for optionality over and over. That is like shipping the whole warehouse every time a customer orders one item. Capability is good. Blind capability is expensive. The third issue is context replay. This is one of the biggest hidden costs in many agent systems. To preserve continuity, many frameworks resend the full conversation history every turn. That sounds intelligent, but financially, it is dangerous. Because the longer the session runs, the more expensive every new step becomes. Even a simple request can drag behind a long trail of old context. Instead of working from a compact state, the system keeps rereading the past. That is not scalable memory. That is repeated ingestion. And from a business standpoint, it means your unit economics can worsen as engagement deepens. That is the opposite of what you want. The fourth issue is heartbeats. This is where agents keep checking in, staying active, or maintaining readiness in the background. The concept sounds attractive. It suggests persistence. It suggests awareness. It suggests a living system rather than a passive interface. But if those background loops consume large amounts of tokens without producing clear business output, then persistence becomes waste. An executive should ask a very blunt question here. What measurable value is this background activity creating? If the answer is vague, then the architecture is leaking money. Fifth, there are hidden background calls. This is where the reporting gap becomes dangerous. The user sees one action, but behind the scenes, the system may trigger several model calls for planning, routing, summarizing, validating, retrieving memory, or preparing tool use. So the visible experience looks efficient while the actual cost structure is multiplying in the background. That distorts management visibility. And when leadership cannot see the real call chain, they cannot manage the real cost base. This is where many AI projects become misleading. They are presented as one interaction. They are billed like five. Sixth is sub-agent sprawl. A lot of systems now break work into specialist agents: planning agent, research agent, execution agent, review agent. On paper, that sounds elegant. Sometimes it is the right choice. But every spawned agent often carries its own context, prompts, and tool overhead. So each new specialist can behave like a fresh cost center. If your architecture delegates too freely, then the system starts paying setup costs again and again. At that point, specialization is not improving efficiency, it is multiplying redundancy. Seventh is large tool output retention. This one is less obvious but financially serious. When tools return long logs, raw search results, big documents, or oversized outputs, those results often get written into the active history. That means the system is not just paying for the output once, it may keep paying for it on every later turn because it remains inside the context window. So one bloated retrieval step can become recurring tax on the rest of the session. This is how costs quietly compound. Now step back and look at the full pattern. System prompt tax, tool schema overhead, context replay, heartbeats, hidden background calls, sub-agent sprawl, large output retention. These are not isolated bugs. They are architectural choices, and that is the real executive lesson. If your agent economics look weak, the model may not be your main issue at all. The real issue may be that your system keeps paying for scaffolding instead of value creation. That distinction changes what leaders should do next. If you focus only on model price, you may win a small reduction in cost per token while keeping the same broken operating pattern. That is not a serious fix. It is a temporary discount on a structural waste. A stronger response starts with management discipline. Ask your team how many tokens are fixed overhead versus task relevant work. Ask how much context is replayed every turn. How many tools are always attached even when unused. Ask how many hidden model calls sit behind one visible action. Ask what background activity is running and what business output it creates. Ask how sub-agents are triggered and whether they improve results enough to justify their cost. Ask whether large tool outputs are being summarized or dumped raw into memory. These are not engineering trivia. These are executive control questions because they determine whether your AI development can scale profitably or only scale theatrically. A system can look advanced because it appears active, persistent, tool connected, and multi agent. But those same qualities can destroy production economics if they are not tightly governed. In other words, sophistication without cost discipline is not a strategic advantage. It is technical vanity with a budget. So here is the bottom line for executives. Do not ask only whether your AI agent works. Ask whether its economics work. Do not ask only when model powers it. Ask what architecture surrounds it. Do not reward teams only for capability. Reward them for capability with defensible unit economics. Because the winners in this market will not just build agents that can act. They will build agents that can act efficiently, predictably, and profitably. And in the next phase of enterprise AI, that difference will separate scalable businesses from expensive experiments. Thank you.